Silence. A man's hand hovers over a locked drawer. He doesn't open it. He just stares. Cut to two small faces watching through a window. Twin children with eyes too old for their age. They don't wave. They don't smile. They just watch. 8 years ago, he walked away from a question he refused to answer. Now that question has a face. Two faces. And they're not asking for anything, which is exactly what terrifies him. Cut to a woman standing in a doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Behind her, the twins disappear into shadow. What happens when the lie you built your empire on starts to remember you? Min Jae-won had learned long ago that silence was a weapon. Not the kind you wielded in negotiation, but the kind you carried inside yourself. Sharp, heavy, and precise. The kind that kept questions from forming. The kind that made certain memories irrelevant. Tonight, that silence felt heavier than usual. He sat alone in his office on the 42nd floor of a building that didn't officially belong to him. The city stretched below like a map of calculated risks, each light representing a decision made, a debt collected, a life redirected. Seoul never stopped moving, and neither did he. That was the agreement. Movement equaled survival. Stillness invited consequences. But tonight, he was still. The desk in front of him was clean. No papers, no clutter, nothing that suggested indecision. Just a single black folder placed precisely in the center. He hadn't opened it yet, hadn't needed to. He already knew what was inside. Her name. Not the one she used now, but the one she'd carried 8 years ago when she'd been someone else entirely. Someone who had briefly existed in the margins of his carefully constructed world before he'd made sure she disappeared from it. His phone buzzed. A message from his second-in-command, Park Hyun-soo. The shipment cleared customs. Everything's clean. You want me to handle the follow-up, or do you want eyes on it? Jae-won typed back without hesitation. Handle it. I'm busy. He wasn't busy. He was avoiding something, and Hyun-soo was smart enough not to ask what. The folder sat there, untouched, as if daring him to prove that the past didn't matter. That it had been buried deep enough to stay buried. He reached for it. Stopped. Pulled his hand back. The door to his office opened without a knock. Only one person had that clearance. You're not drinking, Hyun-soo observed, stepping inside with the casual authority of someone who'd earned the right to disregard formality. That's new. Jae-won didn't look up. I don't need to drink to think. No, but you usually do when you're thinking about something you don't want to admit. Hyun-soo crossed the room, leaning against the edge of the desk. What's in the folder? Nothing. Right. That's why you've been staring at it for the last 20 minutes like it's about to explode. Jae-won finally looked at him. What do you want, Hyun-soo? I want to know why you're acting like someone who's about to make a decision he's going to regret. Hyun-soo tilted his head, studying him. You've been off for weeks. Distracted. And you don't get distracted unless something's crawled under your skin. I'm fine. You're lying. Jae-won leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking under the shift in weight. If I wanted a therapist, I'd hire one. Good thing I'm not offering therapy. I'm offering observation. Hyun-soo crossed his arms. You've been tracking someone. Someone who's not a threat, not a competitor, not anyone we need to deal with. So why are you wasting resources on a ghost? Jae-won's jaw tightened. Drop it. I will. As soon as you tell me what this is really about. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched, familiar and oppressive, until Jae-won finally exhaled. It's a loose end, he said quietly. Nothing more. Loose ends don't get folders, they get handled. Hyun-soo straightened, his tone shifting. You want me to take care of it? No. Then what do you want? Jae-won didn't answer. Because the truth was, he didn't know. He'd spent 8 years convincing himself that certain decisions were final. That some doors, once closed, stayed closed. That the world moved forward, and so did he. But the folder on his desk suggested otherwise. Hyun-soo sighed, heading for the door. Whatever this is, don't let it sit too long. Hesitation gets people killed. I'm not hesitating. No? Hyun-soo paused at the threshold, glancing back. Then why haven't you opened it? The door closed behind him, leaving Jae-won alone again with the question he didn't want to answer. He stared at the folder for another moment. Then with a sharp, decisive motion, he opened it. Inside, a single photograph. Not recent, but recent enough. A woman, African, 31, according to the notes. Standing outside a small cafe in a neighborhood he didn't recognize. She wasn't smiling, but she didn't look unhappy either. Just present, grounded, like someone who'd built a life out of something broken and made it work. And beside her, 2 children, twins, 8 years old. Jae-won's breath caught. Not because he recognized them, he didn't. He'd never seen them before. But he recognized the possibility of them, the implication, the mathematical certainty that made his carefully controlled world suddenly feel unstable. He closed the folder, pushed it aside, then stood and walked to the window, pressing his palm against the cold glass as if the city below could offer answers it had never provided before. The twins had her eyes, dark, watchful, guarded. But there was something else in their expressions, something that unsettled him in a way he couldn't name. They looked like children who'd learned too early that the world didn't owe them anything. Children who'd been abandoned. Jae-won's reflection stared back at him from the glass, expressionless and cold. He'd built his empire on choices like this, on decisions that required sacrifice, on the understanding that power meant leaving certain things behind. But for the first time in 8 years, he wondered if some things refused to stay buried. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Hyun-soo. "You good?" Jae-won typed back, "I'm fine." He wasn't. 3 days later, Jae-won found himself doing something he never did, following someone who had no idea they were being followed. He told himself it was reconnaissance, a necessary step in assessing whether the situation required intervention. But the truth was simpler and far more dangerous. He needed to see for himself. The neighborhood was unremarkable, a quiet district on the edge of Seoul where rent was manageable and anonymity was easy. The kind of place where people didn't ask questions because they didn't want to be asked any in return. She lived on the 3rd floor of a modest building with a bakery on the ground level. He watched from across the street, seated in the back of an unmarked car with tinted windows. Hyun-soo sat beside him, silent but disapproving. "This is a mistake," Hyun-soo said flatly. "Noted. You're not going to listen, are you?" "No," Hyun-soo sighed. "Then at least tell me what the end game is. Because from where I'm sitting, this looks like self-destruction with extra steps." Jae-won didn't respond. His attention was fixed on the building's entrance. At exactly 3:47 p.m., the door opened. She stepped out first. Amara, that was the name in the folder. Amara Okonkwo, 31, originally from Lagos. Immigrated to South Korea 9 years ago on a student visa. Stayed. Built a life. She wore a simple coat, her hair pulled back, her movements efficient and purposeful. She wasn't trying to be noticed, and in a city like Seoul, that made her invisible. But Jae-won saw her. And then he saw them. The twins followed her out, each carrying a small backpack. A boy and a girl. Identical in their seriousness, their silence. They didn't run ahead or lag behind. They walked beside her like soldiers in formation, their faces unreadable. "Those are the kids," Hyun-soo muttered. "They don't look like you." Jae-won's jaw tightened. "I didn't ask for your analysis." "You didn't have to. They don't act like kids either. What the hell happened to them?" Jae-won didn't answer. Because he didn't know. And that ignorance felt like a failure he couldn't afford. Amara led the twins down the street toward a small park. She didn't hold their hands. Didn't need to. They stayed close, instinctively aware of her presence in a way that suggested years of practice. Jae-won watched as she stopped at a bench near the playground. The twins sat beside her without being told. She pulled out a thermos, poured something into 2 small cups, handed them over. They drank in silence. No laughter, no questions, no complaints, just quiet obedience. "That's not normal," Hyun-soo said softly. "Kids that age should be running around, making noise. These two look like they've been trained. Trained for what? Survival." Hyun-soo's voice was grim. "They're not playing. They're observing. Watching everyone who walks by like they're assessing threats." Jae-won felt something twist in his chest. A sensation he'd spent years learning to ignore. Guilt, responsibility, the weight of consequences he'd refused to consider. "She's raising them alone," he said quietly. "Looks like it." "Why didn't she come to me?" Hyun-soo gave him a sharp look. "You're joking, right? You denied paternity. Told her to disappear. Made it very clear she was a problem you didn't want to deal with." He paused. She listened. "That's what you wanted." "I didn't want this." "Then what did you want?" Jaewon didn't have an answer. Across the park, Amara stood, gathering the cups and tucking them back into her bag. The twins rose immediately, falling into step beside her as she headed toward the playground. And then she stopped, turned, looked directly at the car. Jaewon froze. She couldn't see him, not through the tinted windows. But her gaze was steady, unflinching, as if she knew exactly where he was, as if she'd known he was there the entire time. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she turned away, guiding the twins toward the swings with the same calm efficiency she'd shown since arriving. Hyun-soo exhaled slowly. "She made you." "She didn't." "She did. And now she's letting you know she knows." He shook his head. "This woman is not afraid of you. Which means she's either very stupid or she's got leverage you don't know about." Jaewon's hands curled into fists. "We're leaving." "Good call." But as the car pulled away, Jaewon found himself glancing back one last time. The twins were on the swings now, moving in perfect synchronization. Not laughing, not smiling. Just existing. And Amara stood nearby, arms crossed, watching them with the same unreadable expression she'd worn when she'd looked directly at his car. She wasn't asking for anything. She wasn't demanding recognition. She was just waiting. And somehow, that terrified him more than any threat ever had. The summons came 2 days later. Not from Amara. From someone far more dangerous. His mother. Min Seo-jin didn't make requests. She issued commands wrapped in politeness, and refusal was never an option. So when the message arrived, "Dinner. Tonight. Don't be late." Jaewon knew exactly what it meant. She knew. He arrived at the family estate just after sunset, the sprawling compound silent except for the rustle of wind through the carefully maintained gardens. The house itself was a monument to control. Every detail curated, every corner designed to project power without ostentation. His mother waited in the dining room, seated at the head of a table set for two. She didn't look up when he entered. "You're 3 minutes late," she said calmly. "Traffic." "Lying doesn't suit you, Jaewon." She gestured to the seat across from her. "Sit." He did, though every instinct told him to leave. A servant poured tea. His mother dismissed them with a subtle wave, and the room emptied, leaving only the two of them. "You've been distracted," she said, lifting her cup with practiced grace. "Careless. That's not like you." "I'm handling it." "Are you?" She set the cup down, her gaze sharp and unyielding. "Because from what I've observed, you're not handling anything. You're circling something you should have buried years ago." Jaewon's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." She leaned back, studying him. The African woman, the twins, the loose end you swore you'd dealt with. His blood ran cold. "How? Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" Her tone was almost amused. "You've been surveilling her for weeks, using resources, diverting attention, and all for what? A woman you dismissed and children who mean nothing to this family. They might be mine." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. His mother's expression didn't change. So? Jaewon stared at her. "If they're mine, that changes everything." "No, Jaewon, it changes nothing." She leaned forward, her voice ice. "You made a choice 8 years ago. You chose this family, this empire. You chose power over uncertainty. And that choice has kept you exactly where you need to be." "I didn't know." "You knew enough." She cut him off. "You knew she was pregnant. You knew there was a possibility. And you walked away because you understood what acknowledging them would cost. And what if I was wrong? Then you were wrong for the right reasons." Her gaze didn't waver. "Those children are not your responsibility. They are hers. She made her choices just as you made yours. They're 8 years old." And they've survived without you for 8 years. They'll continue to survive. She paused. Unless you drag them into a world that will destroy them. Jaewon's hands clenched beneath the table. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you acknowledge them, you make them targets. Her voice dropped. Every enemy you've made, every rival looking for leverage, they'll use those children to break you, and they won't hesitate. You know this. You've done this to others. He did know. He'd used families as leverage, exploited weaknesses, destroyed lives to protect his own. And now, the thought of someone doing that to 2 children who might be his made him feel something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. So, what do you suggest? He asked quietly. Walk away. Again. His mother's tone softened, just slightly. I know you think you owe them something, but the kindest thing you can do for those children is stay out of their lives. And if they come looking for me, they won't. Because she's smarter than you're giving her credit for. His mother picked up her tea again. That woman has kept them hidden for 8 years. She's protected them from you, from this world. And if you truly care about their well-being, you'll let her continue doing exactly that. Jaewon stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. I need to think. No, you don't. His mother's voice followed him to the door. You need to accept that some decisions can't be
안녕, 여러분. Before you continue, if this story touched something in you, you should know I didn't tell everything yet. The complete version has 20 full audio episodes. No interruptions, no ads. Just the story, the emotions, and the moments I couldn't fit in here. If you scan the QR code on your screen, or tap the link in the pinned comment to continue listening right now.
And some children are better off never knowing who their father is. He left without responding, the weight of her words pressing down on him like a sentence he couldn't escape. Outside, the night air was cold and sharp. He stood in the driveway staring at nothing, his mind racing. His mother was right. She was always right. Acknowledging the twins would make them vulnerable, would paint targets on their backs, would expose them to a world that devoured innocence without hesitation. But walking away again felt like a different kind of violence. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. If you're going to keep watching us, at least have the courage to say hello. Jaewon's breath caught. Amara. She'd found his number, which meant she'd known he was there, had probably known for days. And she wasn't hiding. She was calling him out. For the first time in 8 years, Min Jaewon realized he wasn't the one in control. Jaewon stared at the message for a full minute before typing a response. When? The reply came instantly. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., the cafe near the park. Come alone. He didn't ask how she'd gotten his number, didn't question her audacity, because the truth was, he'd been circling this moment for weeks and she'd just forced his hand. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat in his office, the city lights blurring into abstraction, as his mind replayed every decision that had led him here. The folder lay open on his desk, photographs, documents, fragments of a life he'd convinced himself didn't concern him. But it did. It always had. At 1:47 p.m. the next day, Jaewon arrived at the cafe. He wore civilian clothes, dark jeans, a simple jacket, nothing that screamed power or wealth. Hyun-soo had objected to the meeting, had insisted on surveillance, on backup positioned nearby. Jaewon had refused. If this goes wrong, Hyun-soo had warned, you're walking into a trap with no exit strategy. Then I'll deal with it. That's not a plan. That's suicide. It's not your decision. And so he'd come alone, as instructed, to a cafe that smelled of coffee and pastries and normalcy, things that felt foreign in his carefully constructed world. Amara was already there. She sat at a corner table, hands wrapped around a cup of tea, her posture relaxed but her eyes sharp. She didn't stand when he approached, didn't smile, just gestured to the seat across from her. You came, she said simply. You didn't give me much choice. There's always a choice. She took a sip of her tea, studying him over the rim. You've been making choices about us for 8 years. I thought it was time we had a conversation about them. Jaewon sat, his movements controlled. Where are the twins? Safe, which is more than I can say for this conversation. He met her gaze. What do you want? Honestly? She set her cup down. I want to understand what you thought would happen. Did you think I'd just disappear? That you could erase us with silence and money? I sent you money, every month for 2 years. Blood money. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. Payments to make yourself feel better. To buy absolution without actually being present. I was protecting you. From what? Yourself? Amara leaned back, her expression unreadable. You weren't protecting us, J1. You were protecting your reputation, your empire, your carefully constructed image of a man who doesn't make mistakes. Having children at that point in my life would have been a mistake. The words came out harsher than he'd intended, and he saw something flicker in her eyes. Not pain, she was past that. Something closer to vindication. There it is, she said quietly. The truth you've been avoiding. You didn't deny paternity because you weren't sure. You denied it because you were afraid. I'm not afraid of anything. No? She tilted her head. Then why are you here? Why did you spend weeks watching us from a distance instead of just walking away? Why does the idea of those children terrify you so much? Jaewon's jaw clenched. I don't owe you an explanation. You're right. You don't. Amara's voice softened, but her gaze remained steady. But you owe them one. And eventually, you're going to have to decide whether you're brave enough to give it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The cafe hummed around them. Conversations, laughter, the hiss of the espresso machine. Normal people living normal lives, untouched by the weight of decisions that destroyed futures. What do you want from me? J1 asked finally. Nothing. He blinked. Nothing? I didn't ask you here to demand child support or recognition or some grand gesture. She leaned forward, her voice dropping. I asked you here because those children deserve to know the truth. Not now. Not until they're ready. But someday they're going to ask me about their father. And when they do, I need to be able to tell them something other than, he didn't want you. I never said, you didn't have to say it. You showed them. Every day for 8 years. Her eyes held his. But here's the thing, Jaewon. They don't need you. They've never needed you. They have me. They have stability. They have a life that doesn't include violence or danger or the weight of your world. Then why tell me this? Because I need to know if you're going to be a problem. She said it bluntly, without malice. If you're going to keep watching us, keep circling, keep treating us like an unfinished transaction. Because if you are, I need to prepare them for that. I need to protect them from the possibility of you. Jaewon felt something crack inside him. You think I'd hurt them? I think you'd do what you always do. Make the choice that serves you. And if that choice involves erasing us again, or worse, acknowledging us in a way that puts them in danger, then yes, I think you'd hurt them. Not intentionally, but the result would be the same. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, to explain that every choice he'd made had been calculated to minimize harm. But the truth was, she was right. What are their names? He asked quietly. Amara hesitated. For the first time since he'd arrived, he saw uncertainty in her expression. Why does it matter? Because I need to know. She studied him for a long moment, as if weighing the risk of giving him even this small piece of information. Then slowly, she spoke. Zuri and Kofi. Jaewon repeated the names silently, feeling the weight of them settle in his chest. Zuri means beautiful in Swahili, Amara continued. Kofi means born on Friday. They were born on a Friday, in a hospital room where I was alone because the man who should have been there chose not to be. I didn't know you were in labor. You didn't ask. She stood, gathering her coat. You made your choice, Jaewon, and I've made mine. I'm raising them to be strong, to be kind, to understand that the world doesn't owe them anything, but that doesn't mean they're worthless. I never said they were worthless. You didn't have to. She paused at the edge of the table. But here's what I'll offer you. One chance. Not now. Not until they're older. But if you ever decide you want to be part of their lives, truly part of their lives, not just a shadow watching from a distance, you come to me first. You don't approach them. You don't disrupt their world. You earn the right to know them. And if I can't earn it, then you stay away. Permanently. Her voice was final. Because they deserve better than a father who shows up out of guilt, and disappears when it gets hard. She left before he could respond, the door chiming softly as she stepped out into the afternoon light. Jaewon sat alone at the table, staring at the empty seat across from him. Zuri. Kofi. For 8 years, they'd been abstract. A possibility. A consequence he'd refused to name. Now they were real. And he had no idea what to do about it. When he returned to his office, Hyun-soo was waiting. "How'd it go?" he asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. "She gave me an ultimatum, which was, earn the right to know them or stay away forever." Hyun-soo let out a low whistle. "She's got spine. I'll give her that." He paused. "So what are you going to do?" Jaewon walked to the window, looking out over the city. "I don't know. That's a first. This whole situation is a first." Hyun-soo joined him at the window. "You want my opinion?" "No. I'm giving it anyway." He crossed his arms. "You can't have both. You can't be the man who runs this empire and the man who shows up to school plays. Those worlds don't mix. And trying to force them together will destroy everyone involved. So I should walk away." "I didn't say that." Hyun-soo's voice softened. "I'm saying you need to decide what you're willing to sacrifice. Because this isn't a negotiation you can win through strategy. It's a choice that's going to cost you something no matter what you do." Jaewon's reflection stared back at him from the glass. A man built on control, now facing the one thing he couldn't control. 2 children who carried his blood but not his name. A woman who'd built a life in the ruins of his rejection. And a future that branched in directions he'd never allowed himself to imagine. "I need time," he said finally. "How much time?" "I don't know." Hyun-soo nodded slowly. "Just don't take too long. Kids grow up fast. And if you wait until they're older, you might find they've already decided they don't need you." He left Jaewon alone with the thought. The city pulsed below, indifferent and relentless. Somewhere in that sprawl, Zuri and Kofi were living their lives, going to school, eating dinner, learning to navigate a world that had already taught them harsh lessons about absence. And Jaewon stood at the center of his empire, surrounded by power and wealth and influence, realizing for the first time that none of it meant anything if he couldn't answer the simplest question. Who did he want to be? The man who walked away? Or the man who stayed? 3 weeks passed. Jaewon threw himself into work, burying the question beneath layers of meetings and decisions and calculated moves. He told himself he was thinking, strategizing, waiting for the right moment. But the truth was, he was stalling. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. Hyun-soo burst into his office without knocking, his face pale. "We have a problem." Jaewon looked up from his desk. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that involves your past coming back to haunt you." Hyun-soo placed a tablet on the desk, the screen showing a photograph. Amara, walking down the street with the twins. And behind them, barely visible in the background, a man Jaewon recognized immediately. Choi Sang-wook, a rival. A snake who'd been circling Jaewon's territory for months, looking for weaknesses to exploit. "When was this taken?" Jaewon's voice was ice. "This morning. Our surveillance picked it up." Hyun-soo's jaw was tight. He's not just watching her. He's getting close, asking questions. And if he connects the dots, he'll use them as leverage. Exactly. Jaewon's blood turned cold. This was the nightmare his mother had warned him about. The consequence he'd been trying to avoid. But avoidance wasn't an option anymore. "Pull everyone we have," Jaewon said, his voice sharp and decisive. "I want eyes on her and the twins 24 hours a day. I want to know every move Choi makes. And I want a full threat assessment on my desk in an hour." "Already done." Hyun-soo hesitated. "But Jaewon, if we move too aggressively, we tip our hand. He'll know they matter to you." "They do matter to me." The words came out before he could stop them, raw and undeniable. Hyun-soo's expression shifted. Surprise, then something closer to respect. "All right, then we do this right. No half measures." "No half measures," Jaewon agreed. As Hyun-soo left, Jaewon grabbed his phone and typed a message to Amara. "We need to talk. Now, it's not safe." The response came 3 minutes later. "What are you talking about?" He sent the photograph. "This man is dangerous. He's watching you. Watching them. You need to trust me. The pause stretched longer this time. Then, why should I trust you? Jaewon stared at the screen, at the question that held 8 years of pain and abandonment. He typed the only answer that mattered. Because I'm their father, and I'm not walking away this time. Amara agreed to meet him that night. Not at a cafe this time, somewhere private. Somewhere Choi surveillance couldn't reach. A safe house on the outskirts of Seoul, secured by Jaewon's people and swept for electronic devices. When she arrived, she came alone, her expression a careful mask of neutrality. You have 5 minutes to explain, she said, stepping inside. Choi Sang-wook, mid-40s, runs an operation out of Busan, trafficking, extortion, weapons. Jaewon pulled up files on a tablet, showing her everything they had. He's been trying to undermine my organization for years, and now he's found what he thinks is my weakness. Amara's face paled as she scanned the documents. The twins. He doesn't know for certain, not yet, but if he keeps digging, he will. And when he does, he'll use them to hurt you. She looked up, her eyes blazing. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid. This is why I stayed away. Why I built a life separate from yours. I know. Do you? Her voice cracked. Do you have any idea what it's like to raise children in fear? To teach them to be invisible because visibility means danger? I've spent 8 years protecting them from your world, and now I'm going to protect them too. The words stopped her cold. Jaewon stepped closer, his voice low and steady. I made a mistake 8 years ago. I thought walking away would keep you safe. That distance would be protection. I was wrong. And I'm not going to make that mistake again. What are you saying? I'm saying you were right. I was afraid. Of responsibility. Of failure. Of becoming the kind of father mine was. He paused, forcing himself to meet her eyes. But I'm more afraid of something happening to them because I was too much of a coward to step up. Amara studied him, searching for deception. You can't just decide to be their father now. It doesn't work like that. I know. But I can decide to keep them alive, to make sure Choi never gets close enough to hurt them. He pulled up another file. I have a plan. A safe house outside the city, security, new identities if necessary. Everything you need to disappear until this is resolved. And how long will that take? Weeks? Months? Years? Her voice was bitter. You're asking me to uproot their entire lives because of your enemies. I'm asking you to let me protect you. For once. At what cost? Amara shook her head. You think money and security will fix this? That you can buy your way into their lives? No. I think I can earn my way in. By proving that I'm not the man who walked away. That I'm willing to sacrifice everything to keep them safe. Sacrifice? She laughed, sharp and humorless. What do you know about sacrifice, Jaewon? You've never had to choose between your life and theirs. You've never stayed up at night wondering if you made the right call, if you're enough. You're right. I don't know what that's like. His voice softened. But I want to learn. And I know that starts with making sure you and Zuri and Kofi survive this. The sound of their names on his lips made her flinch. Don't, she whispered. Don't say their names like you know them. Then let me know them. He took a breath. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. Let me prove that I can be more than the man who abandoned you. Amara closed her eyes, her shoulders trembling. If I do this, if I let you help, I need your word that you won't treat them like assets. Like pieces on a chessboard. They're children. My children. And they deserve better than to be collateral damage in your war. You have my word. She opened her eyes, searching his face. How do I know you'll keep it? Because if I don't, you'll take them and disappear, and I'll never see them again. His voice was raw. And that terrifies me more than any enemy ever could. For a long moment, silence filled the space between them. Then, slowly, Amara nodded. One condition. Anything. When this is over, when Choi is dealt with and they're safe, you don't just walk back into their lives. You earn it, you show up, you stay consistent. You prove that you're not going to disappear the moment things get hard. I will. And if you can't? Her eyes were hard. If you realize that being a father isn't compatible with being who you are, you walk away for good. No more surveillance, no more watching from a distance. You let us go. Jae-won felt the weight of the promise settle over him like a sentence. Agreed. The next 72 hours were a blur of controlled chaos. Jae-won moved Amara and the twins to the safe house under cover of night. Hyun-soo coordinated a team of his most trusted operatives to establish a perimeter, while Jae-won personally oversaw every detail: escape routes, communication protocols, contingency plans. He didn't meet the twins. Not yet. Amara had been clear. They didn't need the confusion of a stranger appearing in their lives during a crisis. But he saw them. Through security feeds, through reports from his team, through the window of the safe house as they adjusted to their new temporary reality. Zuri was quiet, watchful. She moved through the space like she was cataloging every exit, every potential threat. Kofi was more expressive, asking questions Amara answered with practiced patience. They were so small, so fragile, so utterly unprepared for the world Jae-won had dragged them into. And yet they adapted. Kids are resilient, Hyun-soo observed, standing beside Jae-won as they monitored the feeds. More than we give them credit for. They shouldn't have to be. No, but that's the world we've built. Hyun-soo glanced at him. You know this is just the beginning, right? Even if we neutralize Choi, there will be others. There will always be others. Then I'll deal with them too. For how long? The rest of your life? If that's what it takes. Hyun-soo shook his head. You really mean that? I do. 48 hours later, Choi made his move. He sent a message through intermediaries, a meeting request, framed as a business opportunity. Jae-won knew it was a trap. Knew Choi would use the meeting to extract information or make demands. But he went anyway. The meeting took place in a warehouse on the docks, neutral territory controlled by neither side. Choi arrived with his entourage, armed, arrogant, smiling like a man who thought he'd already won. Min Jae-won, Choi said, spreading his arms in mock welcome. I was beginning to think you'd lost your nerve. What do you want, Choi? Straight to business. I admire that. Choi circled him slowly. I want what's mine, territory in Gangnam. The shipping routes through Incheon, and a public acknowledgement that your time as the top dog is over. That's not going to happen. No? Choi stopped, his smile widening. Even if I told you I have leverage? Something you care about more than territory or pride? Jae-won's blood went cold. Careful, or what? Choi leaned in, his voice dropping. You'll threaten me? Hurt me? I've done my homework, Jae-won. I know about the African woman, the twins. 8 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Beautiful children. Would be a shame if something happened to them. Jae-won moved faster than Choi expected, grabbing him by the throat and slamming him against a steel beam.
If you made
The
it to
warehouse
the end,
erupted in chaos.
you already understand
Choi's men
this
drawing
isn't
weapons,
just another story.
Jae-won's team
What you
responding
watched
in
here is only
kind.
a fragment.
But Jae-won
The full
didn't let go.
experience lives in 20 complete
Listen very
audio
carefully,
episodes,
he
carefully
said,
told,
his voice
with
lethal.
every detail,
If
every
you so
emotion,
much as think
every
about
turning
those
point.
children again,
There are
I
no
will
ads,
erase you.
no interruptions,
Not just you,
and
everyone
nothing
you
was
care
removed
about,
like it is on
every
YouTube.
operation you run,
You can
every
listen
ally
anytime
you
on your
have.
phone with total
I will burn
privacy
your entire
inside
world to the
members
ground
only
and
area.
scatter the ashes.
Scan the QR code on your screen
Choi's
now,
eyes
or
widened,
tap the link in the
genuine
pinned
fear
comment
flickering beneath his
to unlock
bravado.
the full story and continue
You're
listening
bluffing.
immediately.
Try me. For a long moment, the warehouse held its breath. Then, slowly, Jae-won released him. Choi staggered back, rubbing his throat. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Jae-won's voice was calm now, controlled. Because if you walk out of here and ever come near them again, there won't be a second warning. There will only be consequences. Choi stared at him, then at the armed men surrounding them, calculating his odds. Finally, he nodded. You've made your point. Good, then we're done here. Choi left, his entourage following. The warehouse emptied, leaving Jae-won alone with Hyun-soo. That was reckless, Hyun-soo said quietly. It was necessary. You just confirmed they matter to you. Every rival we have will know by tomorrow. Let them know. Jae-won's voice was steady. Let them all know. Because if anyone tries to use those children against me, I'll show them exactly what I'm capable of. Hyun-soo studied him for a long moment. You've changed. No. I've just stopped pretending I haven't already made my choice. 1 week later, Jae-won returned to the safe house. Amara met him at the door, her expression guarded, but no longer hostile. "Choi?" she asked. "Handled. He won't be a problem." "And the others?" "They know the cost of targeting you. It won't happen again." She nodded slowly, then stepped aside. "They want to meet you." Jaewon froze. "Now?" "They've been asking questions. About the man who's been protecting us. About why we're here." She paused. "I told them the truth. That their father finally decided to show up." His chest tightened. "What did they say?" "And they said they want to see if you're real." Amara led him inside, through the safe house to a small living room where Zuri and Kofi sat on a couch, watching him with identical expressions of cautious curiosity. They were so small. So impossibly small. Jaewon knelt, bringing himself to their eye level. "Hi," he said softly. Kofi spoke first. "Are you really our dad?" "Yes." "Where were you?" Zuri's voice was sharper, more guarded. Jaewon met her gaze, refusing to look away. "I was scared, and I made a mistake, and I'm sorry. Mom says you're trying to protect us now." "I am." "Why?" "Because you're mine, and I should have been here from the beginning." Kofi tilted his head. "Will you stay?" The question hit harder than any threat, any ultimatum. Jaewon glanced at Amara, who watched from the doorway with unreadable eyes. Then he looked back at his children, and made the only promise that mattered. "Yes, I'll stay." "Even when it's hard?" Zuri pressed. "Especially when it's hard." Kofi smiled. Small, tentative, but real. Zuri didn't smile, but she nodded, as if accepting his answer for now. And Jaewon realized that this, right here, right now, was the beginning of something he'd spent 8 years running from. Not redemption, not forgiveness, just presence. The chance to be more than the man who walked away. The chance to be their father. 6 months later, Jaewon stood outside a small school, watching as Zuri and Kofi filed out with their classmates. They spotted him immediately, their faces lighting up in a way that still made his chest ache. "Dad!" Kofi ran over, Zuri following at a more measured pace. "How was school?" Jaewon asked. "Boring," Kofi declared, "but I got an A on my math test." "Good job." Zuri handed him a drawing, a family portrait, stick figures representing her, Kofi, Amara, and him. "You're taller in real life," she said critically. "I'll work on that." She smiled. A real smile. Amara appeared beside them, shaking her head. "You're going to spoil them." "That's the plan." "Terrible plan. Too late to change it." She laughed. Soft, genuine. "Yeah, I guess it is." As they walked together toward the car, Jaewon felt something he'd never allowed himself to feel before. Hope. Not for redemption. Not for absolution. Just for the possibility that broken things could be rebuilt. That mistakes could be learned from. That even the man who'd walked away could find his way back, if he was willing to stay. And this time, he was. But the past never stays buried forever. Because just as Jaewon thought he'd finally found peace, a message arrived on his encrypted phone. From an unknown number, a single photograph. His mother. Standing outside the school, watching. And beneath it, 3 words. "We need to talk." Want to know what happens next? The truth about the Min family is about to explode. If this episode reaches 3,000 views on the same day and receives 20+ comments, Part 2 will be released immediately. Comment below. What do you think about Jaewon's mother's intentions? Do Zuri and Kofi deserve to know the whole truth? Has Jaewon really changed, or is he just reacting to danger? Leave your comment now and help unlock the continuation.